I have spent more than 3 decades studying the habits of people who quietly become millionaires, and I have watched smart, hardworking people stay broke for one simple reason. They keep waiting for a big break that never comes. Most people think wealth comes from a high salary or a lucky stock pick. They are wrong. The real game is built from small, boring choices repeated for decades without anyone clapping for you. During my years studying the thinking of Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, I learned that the investors who win are rarely the smartest people in the room, they are the steadiest. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you will know 3 specific behaviors you can start today, not next year, that separate the people who quietly build $500,000 from the people who earn twice as much and end up with nothing. Janet taught 5th grade for 40 years in a small town, and she never earned more than $50,000 a year in her life. Mike sold commercial real estate 2 towns over, and by his 40s, he was clearing $200,000 a year, sometimes more. If you had to bet which one of them retired with more money, you would probably bet on Mike. You would lose that bet. Janet started putting away $150 a month the year she turned 25. She never increased it. She never decreased it. It came out of her account on the first of the month before she saw a single dollar of her paycheck for 40 straight years. Mike spent his 20s and 30s living the way his income suggested he should live: a bigger house, a boat he used 4 times a year, dinners that cost more than Janet's monthly grocery bill. He told himself he would start saving seriously once he made partner, then once he hit $200,000 a year, then once the kids were out of college. Mike finally started investing at 45. He threw $500 a month at it, more than 3 times what Janet ever put in, trying to make up for lost time. Here is what the math actually did to both of them. Janet put about $72,000 of her own money into her account over 40 years. Growing at a steady rate most long-term investors can expect, her pile grew to roughly $359,000 by the time she turned 65. Mike put in about $120,000 of his own money over 20 years, almost double what Janet put in. His pile grew to roughly $246,000. Read those 2 numbers again. Janet contributed 60% less money than Mike, and still ended up with more than $100,000 more in her account. Luck did not do that. A stock pick did not do that. Time did, and time does not care how big your paycheck looks. Most people think the gap between rich and broke is about income. They are wrong. The gap is about what year you started and whether you kept your hand off the money once you did. Mike did not lose because he was bad with money. He lost because he believed a popular lie that real saving starts later, once things calm down, once the income is bigger, once life feels ready. Life is never going to feel ready. The only thing that was ever going to make Janet's plan work was time, and time does not wait for anyone to feel ready. Carry this idea through the rest of this video. Wealth is not built by the size of the paycheck. It is built by how early you start, how rarely you touch the pile once it is growing, and how boring you are willing to be while everyone around you is busy looking impressive. Feeling behind is not the same as being behind. Janet never felt rich. She drove an 11-year-old car for most of her 30s. She did not feel like she was winning some secret game. She just kept doing the same boring thing every single month, long after it stopped feeling exciting, long after her friends had nicer kitchens and better vacations. The boredom was the price of admission. She paid it for 40 years, and the price bought her a result that Mike's bigger salary could not buy him. Most people only see this clearly in hindsight, looking backward at someone else's life. In real time, it looks completely different. In real time, Janet looked like she was missing out on a better car, a nicer kitchen, vacations her co-workers posted about every summer. In real time, Mike looked like he was winning because his house was bigger and his schedule was full of things money could buy right away. The gap between them was invisible for almost 30 years. It only became visible at the very end, when Janet's account had quietly outgrown the appearance of Mike's whole life. If you are watching this in your 30s, 40s, or 50s feeling like you started too late, hold onto something. Janet's real advantage was not that she started at 25. Her real advantage was that whatever age she started, she never stopped. The age you are right now is simply the earliest age you have left. 45, with 40 years ahead of you, behaves the same way 25 did for Janet, if you give it the same number of undisturbed years to work. 40 years is a long time to wait for a result. It was also exactly how long Janet had to wait, whether she liked it or not, because that clock was always running, whether she paid attention to it or not. Studying Munger and Buffett for years taught me to respect one idea above almost everything else they ever said. Do not interrupt money while it is busy making more money on its own, year after year, even when interrupting it feels responsible in the moment. I once studied the finances of a man who ran a small auto shop his whole life. He never made more than $60,000 a year. He retired with more money than 3 of his customers who were doctors. The difference was not intelligence. The difference was a small set of behaviors he practiced without fail for 30 years, long before anyone called it a strategy. Nobody wrote articles about him. No one filmed his life for a financial channel. He just kept doing 3 unremarkable things for 3 decades, and they added up to a result most of his more impressive-looking customers never reached. That is the pattern I want to hand you today, broken into 3 specific, doable behaviors, the same shape whether the income behind them is $60,000 a year or $600,000. Not 3 secrets, not 3 tricks, 3 behaviors, boring enough that most people skip right past them looking for something more exciting. I am going to walk you through each one, show you the real cost of skipping it, and give you one specific thing to do this week for each. Notice that none of the 3 behaviors you are about to hear require a higher income, a better job, or a smarter investment pick. That is not an accident. Income is the variable everyone obsesses over because it is the most visible number on a paycheck and the easiest thing to compare with a coworker. Behavior is the variable almost nobody talks about because it does not show up anywhere except in an account balance 30 years later, by which point the comparison has already been decided. Mike's income was 4 times Janet's for most of his adult life. It did not matter because income was never the variable doing the actual work. Each of these 3 behaviors attacks a different leak. The first stops money from leaking out before it ever gets invested. The second stops a rising income from quietly turning into a rising lifestyle with nothing left over. The third stops fear from undoing decades of patient work in a single bad week. Skip any one of the 3 and the other 2 get weaker. Practice all 3 for long enough, and the specific size of your paycheck stops mattering nearly as much as you have been told it should. Behavior 1 is this: they pay themselves before they pay anyone else, and they make it automatic so willpower never enters the picture. Most people save whatever is left over at the end of the month. That sounds responsible. It is actually one of the most reliable ways to end up with nothing because there is almost never anything left over. Rent goes up. The car needs new tires. A friend's wedding is in another state. Life fills every gap you leave open, and if saving lives in the gap, saving loses almost every single month. Tom understood this. Tom worked at a hardware store and set up an automatic transfer of $300 a month into an investment account the day after each paycheck hit. He set it up once, in about 10 minutes, and then he forgot about it. For 15 years, that money left his checking account before he ever had a chance to spend it, miss it, or talk himself out of it. Dave worked the same kind of job for the same 15 years and earned about the same income. Dave's plan was to save whatever was left at the end of each month. Some months that was $200. Most months it was closer to $20. Some months he overspent and put nothing away at all. Averaged out, Dave saved about $80 a month over those 15 years. Tom's account grew to roughly $84,000. Dave's grew to roughly $22,000. Same job, same 15 years, same general income. A difference of about $60,000 created entirely by one decision, whether the saving happened automatically or depended on willpower at the end of a long month. $60,000 is not an abstract number. It is the rough difference between needing 3 more years of work before retiring and not needing them, for two people who did the exact same job for the exact same 15 years. The only thing that changed was who controlled the moment the money left the account, the person or the system. I once asked Tom what he would have done with that $300 if it had landed in his checking account. Instead, disappearing automatically. He laughed and said he honestly did not know, probably dinners he could not specifically remember a year later. That is the real comparison, not Tom's discipline against Dave's lack of it. Tom's forgettable spending redirected into something he would actually remember in 15 years, against Dave's forgettable spending, spent on things neither of them could name. Now the obvious objection. You are probably thinking, I do not have an extra $300 a month sitting around. Fair enough. Start with the amount that actually fits your life right now, even if it is $40. The amount matters far less than the habit of it leaving your account without your permission every single month. You can raise the number later. What you cannot easily do later is recover the years you spent waiting for a bigger number to feel comfortable. Second objection. People say automatic saving feels risky, like losing control of their own money. Consider the opposite question. How much control did Dave actually have over his money, given that he ended up with $60,000 less and could not point to a single decision that caused it? The illusion of control by watching every dollar manually cost Dave dearly. The boring automatic system that removed his control gave Tom an extra $60,000. Third objection. People assume this only works if you are naturally disciplined. Tom was not unusually disciplined. He told me himself that he forgot the transfer was even happening most months. That is the entire point. The system did the discipline for him, so his actual willpower, which is limited and gets weaker by the end of a long day, never had to show up. Remember this line, not more discipline, less reliance on discipline in the first place. So step 1 in your life this week is this. Open whatever account you use for saving or investing and set up one automatic transfer for the day after you get paid, even if the number feels small. Do it once. Let it run without you. Behavior 2 is this. When their income goes up, their spending does not automatically go up with it. This is where most hardworking people quietly lose the game without ever noticing it happened. A raise feels like permission. A new job with a bigger salary feels like proof that you have arrived and should finally live like it. That feeling is normal. It is also the single biggest leak in most people's financial lives, and almost nobody plugs it on purpose. Sarah worked in hospital administration. Over 10 years, her income rose from about $4,000 a month to about $5,500 a month through raises and a promotion. She made one decision early on that shaped everything that followed. She kept her actual spending close to where it had always been, and she sent the extra money straight into an investment account the same week each raise landed. Ray worked a similar job with a similar career path over the same 10 years. Every time Ray's income went up, his spending rose to match it within a few months. A bigger apartment, a newer car, nicer dinners that felt earned after a hard week. None of it was reckless on its own. Stacked together over 10 years, it meant Ray invested almost nothing extra, even though his income grew by roughly the same amount as Sarah's. Sarah ended up investing the gap, about $1,500 a month once her raises had fully kicked in, for 10 years at a steady long-term rate. That gap alone grew into roughly $237,000. Ray ended up investing close to none of his raise. Same 10 years, same rough income growth. $250,000 gap created by what each of them did the week the raise hit their account. Understand what that number actually means. It is not about Sarah being cheap or Ray being careless. It is about one rule. The moment money starts arriving that you did not have before, it is the easiest money in your entire financial life to put to work, because you never built a habit around spending it in the first place. I want to be specific about why the timing matters so much. The week a raise arrives is the only week in your entire financial life when increasing your investing does not feel like a cut to anything. You are not taking money away from a lifestyle you already have. You are simply not adding a new lifestyle on top of an old one. That is an enormous difference in how it feels, even though the dollar amount is identical to cutting your current spending by the same number. Sarah was not more willing to sacrifice than Ray. She simply made her decision at the one moment when it required no sacrifice at all. Run the same idea forward to your next raise whenever it comes. A 5% raise on a $50,000 income works out to roughly $200 a month before taxes. Deciding today that half of that goes straight into investing costs you nothing. You currently have. It only stops you from gaining a new expense you do not have yet. Ray gained the expense. Sarah gained the investment. The identical raise, the opposite result, decided in a single week each time a number changed. First objection: people say they deserve to enjoy a raise after working hard for it. You can enjoy part of it. Take 10 or 20% of every raise and spend it on something that makes life better right now. Send the rest where it can grow. You are not choosing between enjoying your life and building wealth. You are choosing how to split a number that did not exist a year ago. Second objection: people assume lifestyle creep is harmless because each individual upgrade feels small. A slightly bigger apartment, a slightly nicer car payment. None of it feels like the decision that ruins your future. It is never one decision. It is 20 small ones stacked over a decade, and Ray never noticed any single one of them costing him $250,000 because no single one of them did. All 20 of them together did. Third objection. People think this only matters for people who earn a lot. Sarah was not wealthy by income. She made a normal hospital administrator's salary. The behavior, not the income, created the gap between her and Ray. Not a bigger paycheck. A flat lifestyle next to a rising income year after year, while nobody else even notices what you are doing. So step 2 in your life this week is this. The next time any extra money shows up, a raise, a bonus, a tax refund, decide in advance what percentage goes straight into investing before it ever touches your everyday spending account. Decide it before the money arrives, not after. Behavior 3 is this. Once the money is invested, they leave it alone, especially when everyone around them is panicking. This is the hardest behavior of the 3 because it asks you to do nothing at the exact moment your entire body is screaming at you to do something. Markets drop. The news gets loud. A coworker mentions they pulled their money out and feels relieved. Doing nothing in that moment feels like recklessness, even though it is usually the single most profitable decision available to you. Lena put $10,000 into a simple, broad investment fund and did not touch it for 25 years. Not during the early scares. Not during the year her account dropped by almost a third. Not when colleagues at work were trading stories about cashing out. She left it alone because she had decided, years before any of those moments arrived, that she would not be checking the account for reactions, only for retirement. Carl put the same $10,000 into a similar fund. 5 years in, the market dropped hard, and Carl sold everything, certain he was protecting himself from further loss. He sat in cash for 2 years, waiting for things to feel safe again. By the time he reinvested, he had about $8,000 left because he had sold near the bottom and missed the early part of the recovery. He invested that smaller amount for the remaining 18 years. Lena's $10,000 grew to roughly $54,000 over 25 years. Carl's shrunken $8,000 grew to roughly $27,000 over his remaining 18 years. Same starting amount, same general market. One decision in the middle of a scary year cost Carl about $27,000, almost exactly half of what Lena ended up with. $27,000 is not just a number on Carl's statement. It is the rough cost of one bad decision made during one frightening month, compared against 25 years of simply leaving the account alone. Nobody hands you a bill for panic. It just quietly subtracts itself from the number you would have otherwise had, and you rarely find out the size of that bill until decades later, when it is too late to undo. Notice something about Carl's story that most people miss. Carl did not lose money because he was wrong about the market eventually recovering. He was right. It did recover. He lost money because being right about the long run did not protect him from a wrong decision made in the short run, in a single emotional week that felt like the most rational week of his entire investing life. Confidence and accuracy are not the same thing. Carl felt more certain the week he sold than at almost any other point in 25 years, and that certainty cost him roughly half of what Lena ended up with. Understand what actually happened there. The market did not punish Carl for investing. The market punished Carl for leaving and coming back at the wrong moments. Lena was not smarter than Carl. She was not better at predicting anything. She simply refused to let a scary month turn into a permanent decision. First objection. People say it is irresponsible to do nothing while your account is visibly losing money. Consider what Carl's respond. Sybil feeling action actually cost him. The damage was not done by the market dropping. The damage was done by Carl converting a temporary drop into a permanent loss the moment he sold. Second objection. People assume this only works because markets always eventually recover and that this time might be different. That fear is exactly what keeps people from making decisions in advance, while they are calm instead of in the moment, while they are scared. Lena's plan was not built during the scary month. It was built years earlier when she was thinking clearly, so that during the scary month there was nothing left to decide. Third objection. People think patience means doing nothing forever, never checking, never adjusting anything. Patience means not making decisions driven by fear in a single bad month. It does not mean ignoring your plan for 30 years. It means protecting the plan from the worst version of yourself, the version that shows up when the news is loud. So step 3 in your life this week is this. Write down, on paper, what you will do the next time your investments drop sharply. Decide it now while you are calm, so that future version of you has instructions to follow instead of a decision to make. Here is where almost every plan like this quietly falls apart, and it is not where you would expect. The plan does not fall apart because people fail to understand the math. Everyone nods along when they hear about Janet, or Tom, or Sarah, or Lena. The math is not the hard part. The hard part is a specific moment, usually about 4 to 6 weeks into any new habit, when the new behavior stops feeling new and starts feeling like a chore. The automatic transfer that felt exciting on day one now just feels like less money in your checking account on a Tuesday. The flat lifestyle that felt like a smart choice in month one now feels like missing out while a coworker posts pictures from a trip you did not take. That is the exact moment willpower runs out, and willpower running out is not a character flaw. It is what willpower does. It is built to run out. Most people respond to that moment by quietly turning the automatic transfer off, just this once, just for this month, to cover something that feels urgent. Then it happens again the next month. Within a year, the system that was supposed to run without them has been switched off so many times that it is functionally dead, even though nobody ever decided to kill it on purpose. The fix is not more motivation. Motivation is not a renewable resource you can will yourself into having on a random Tuesday 8 months from now. The fix is structure that does not ask your motivation to show up at all. Make the transfer harder to undo than it is to leave alone. Route it through an account you rarely look at. On a day you are usually busy with other things, in an amount small enough that pausing it does not feel like an emergency decision worth making. Give the system one more layer of protection if you can. Name the account something other than savings. Call it by what it is actually for 10 years out, so that pulling from it requires admitting out loud what you would be giving up. A label is a small thing. Small things are exactly what this entire video has been about. This is the part nearly every saving video skips past quickly because it is less satisfying to talk about than a new app or a clever trick. This single moment, the month the new habit stops feeling new, is where almost all of the difference between Janet and Mike, between Tom and Dave, between Sarah and Ray, between Lena and Carl actually got decided. Not in the big dramatic year. In the quiet, forgettable month nobody else ever heard about. Janet never had to win an internal argument against her own impulses every single month for 40 years. She won that argument exactly once, the month she set up the transfer, and then the system carried the weight for the next 4 decades. That is the entire secret hiding inside everything I have told you today. Not a stronger version of you, a system that does not need a strong version of you to keep working. The thesis of everything I have told you today is simple. Wealth is built by ordinary, boring behaviors repeated without interruption for a long time, not by income, intelligence, or timing the right moment. Step back from the dollar signs for a moment, because that is not actually what any of this is about. Janet was not chasing a number. She was buying herself a version of old age where she would not have to ask anyone for help, where a bad month would not threaten her home, where she could say no to work she no longer wanted to do. Tom was not trying to beat Dave. He was buying himself options that Dave did not have, quietly, one automatic transfer at a time. Sarah was not punishing herself by keeping her lifestyle flat. She was buying a future where a rising income did not just disappear into upgrades she would barely remember in 5 years. None of this was ever really about money. It was about life, about how much of your life you get to spend on your own terms instead of someone else's, how much choice you have left when the unexpected finally shows up, because it always shows up eventually. A bigger pile of savings is not the prize. The prize is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you built something that does not depend on luck, on a bonus arriving, or on the market behaving itself this particular year. None of the 4 people in this video were exceptional. None of them had access to information you do not have access to right now, today, with whatever device you are using to watch this. The only resource any of them used that mattered was time, spent without interruption, on a decision most people make once and then abandon within a season. You do not need a better income than Mike's. You do not need to be smarter than Carl. You need to make one decision and then leave it alone longer than feels comfortable. Picture yourself 20 years from now, looking back at this particular week. That version of you will not remember whether you skipped one dinner out or one weekend trip to make this work. That version of you will only know whether the transfer started or whether it kept getting pushed to next month, the way it does for almost everyone who watches a video like this and feels inspired for exactly 9 days. Most people spend their whole life chasing the feeling of having arrived. Few people notice that the feeling never actually arrives through a bigger number. It arrives through the discipline of a small number, protected and left alone, year after year, until one day you look up and realize you have options most people around you do not have. That is what this entire video has actually been about. Not getting rich, getting free. You spent the next several minutes of your life here instead of somewhere else, and that matters more than you probably think it does. The next video picks up exactly where this one leaves off. The specific moment most people abandon their plan in year 2 or 3, long after the excitement of starting has worn off, and exactly what to put in place before that moment ever arrives. Subscribe not because this channel needs another number on a screen, but because the behaviors I just walked you through only work with repetition, and repetition is easier when you have somewhere to come back to. This is not entertainment you finish and forget. This is a discipline, the same one Janet, Tom, and Sarah quietly practiced for decades without anyone watching or applauding. Most people who learn this forget it within a month, not because the idea was wrong, but because no one reminded them while the excitement faded. Disciplines fade fastest when they are practiced alone. Start with one transfer this week. Everything else can wait.